Namaskar, I'm Ashok Vyas, and this month of March is very special, and then comes April, and 15th April becomes an important date because that happens to be the deadline for filing taxes. Tax season makes those people even more important who are important otherwise, also whom we refer to as CPAs. And what are the new provisions in the tax law, or what provisions need our attention? We are glad to be welcoming a gentleman who is expert in this field and would be sharing his insight, his information, along with some tips that may come handy for us. So, Lalit Abhichandani ji, welcome.
Namaskar.
So, you have your practice operating from Manhattan, yes, and you have been actively helping people and organizations for many, many years. Let's talk in general. To begin with, how do you like the services that you render as CPA?
From my point of view, this is all I've been doing, and taxes are a very important part of our life. Whether you lived in India or in United States, it's an integral part of our living in this country. From basic minimum wage to people making a lot of money, everybody has to pay taxes. So from my point of view, of course I like it, this is my profession, but my viewpoint is that everybody should know a little bit about their income and their taxation.
Wonderful. So when the way Lalitji says that I like it, maybe many taxpayers not be in a position to say that I like paying taxes, but indeed we like it because of the taxes that we pay. A lot of things are happening, and so there is an relationship, interdependence between the facilities that are provided by the government. So government have this discretion of making some changes, and the Congress recently changed the rules of income tax and increased the tax rates. Now we are already starting to wonder how it is going to affect us. So on that side, Lalitji, give us some tidbits.
This new rule that was passed on January 2nd is affecting almost all of us. Of course, the rich people are going to be paying major share of that, but even people who earn minimum wage, they are affected. The government has increased Social Security by 2%, so everybody's paycheck is reduced. But of course, the major brunt that is going to be affected will be people who are making more than $400,000. Who are individuals making $400,000 or married filing joint making $450,000.
So they will be paying more?
They will be paying what was 35% tax bracket is now a 39.6% tax bracket. So they will be paying more, and there are a couple of other provisions where they will be paying more taxes in capital gains and in other areas.
So we have heard many new terms of late recently. Earlier, $1 trillion was something we would not hear so often as we hear it now. And then there is discussion going on between Republicans and Democrats about whether super rich should be taxed more or less. So sometimes those of us who are far away from that state of being super rich, we wonder how much tax ultimately these people are paying, and when they are saying that increase more tax burden on these people, etc. So in general, Lalitji, what is the maximum tax that anybody making any amount of income pays here in United States?
The maximum income tax rate, which was 35% before, for people making more than $400,000, they were paying 35% tax, will now be paying 39.6%. So the government increased 4.6% in the rate of income tax on the total income tax. And then there are a couple of other taxes that they increased, like in Medicare taxes, there is an additional increase of 3.8%. But that is only for people making more than $400,000 or $450,000 for people who are married filing joint.
So now there is another thing. We hear these names with so much attention. Warren Buffett said this, or Bill Gates said this, and when some people who are very rich, they say that why should I be paying less tax than someone who is working as a secretary and maybe making $30,000, $40,000 a year. So one wonders are there different set of rules governing the tax code as far as capital gains or dividends are concerned?
Absolutely. There's a big difference in the tax rate between what you pay on an earned income. So let's say when you're working somewhere and you're making $200,000 or $100,000, the tax rate is different than when you are investing that money into stocks or bonds or in a real estate, and you make money on top of that, which is known as capital gain. So those rates are substantially low compared to the normal tax rates. So the capital gain tax rates are 10% or 15% at the lower level and 20% at the higher level, as against the normal tax rate on an earned income, it can go as high as 35 or 39.6%.
So this is actually proving the saying that money makes money. So if you have a lot of money, it's easy to make more money without paying that much tax. Now, talking about saving taxes or finding ways so that you take advantage of the deductions, etc. Then many people also want to take into account that once they retire, there should be something to sustain them, and from that point of view, this IRA word comes, and there is another term which is very interesting. It is Roth IRA. Now, as a layman, we wonder what, when it is already IRA, then what is happening with this prefix Roth?
IRA is an individual retirement account. Now, traditionally, you're allowed to deduct X amount of dollars from your taxable income and put it into savings. That's the retirement account they are talking about. And there are two basic categories, which is traditional IRA and Roth IRA. Traditional IRA, when you put that money into that account, you save that money right away. So let's say in 2012 you were given $5,000 as a limit to put it. When you put that $5,000, you get a tax deduction right away. Versus Roth IRA, if you are choosing to go into Roth IRA, you do not get a deduction up front, but you will never pay taxes on the earnings on that Roth IRA amount that you invested. So if you keep doing it for multiple years and you have earned income in that account, you will never pay taxes. So that's what is known as Roth IRA.
So that's very interesting difference. And so how would you decide that you should go for IRA or Roth IRA?
It varies on different variables, what your income is, how much money you have available, what will be the right combination of either traditional or Roth IRA, or we go this way or that way. So once we have the data in front of us, we advise our clients accordingly, which is the best way to do.
And let's say someone has X number of dollars in his IRA or Roth IRA account, and he needs money today, and if he takes that money out without waiting for the retirement, so is there any penalty that they pay?
Yes, definitely, especially in traditional IRA, because you have saved money. The government has given you a deduction at the time of putting the money in. If you're going to withdraw this money prior to the age of 59 and a half, then you will pay 10% penalty on that. As against Roth IRA, in Roth IRA, you are not getting any deduction, you're putting it there. The only requirement there is that you must have that account for at least 5 years. If you withdraw the money prior to the 5th year, then there is a penalty on that.
Well, so we are talking about taxes and penalties, and with us today is Lohit Abichandani. He has helped many people for their taxes and many companies also. America is a place about which we have heard that the place that helps you in realizing your dreams. And when we talk about American dream, there are many people who come to this wonderful place called America as students. And in order to take care of the day-to-day expenses, some of the students find some part-time jobs, or they do something extra. So as a student, when you are making just enough to take care of your needs, are you still expected to pay taxes?
Yeah, the foreign students who come on F1 visa for studying, their basic purpose is for studying, and when they come here, obviously they end up doing some part-time jobs, or after a couple of years they are given what is known as OPT, which is optional practical training, and they actually go and work somewhere, and make some money.
Right.
So at that time, when you start making money, you have to pay taxes on that. The government has given a preferential, there is a preferential category for F1 students. They do not pay the Social Security, but you still have to pay the federal and state taxes where you live.
So federal and state taxes you need to pay,
right,
even
right.
as a student, and there are times when people don't show what they are making in terms of if they are taking cash. I know it's not something to be talked about, but there is this thing happening that many people don't even have the proper papers to be living here and working. Now, what is their situation? They don't have green card, they don't have any proper visa. So, if they file for the taxes, will IRA inform the agencies that would go after them and initiate the process of deportation, or they are not communicating?
People who come here illegally or they stay back illegally for a number of years, they ultimately they start doing some odd jobs, and they make, like you said, they make cash, or they might make some income here and there, and the government, the IRS, even though it's a department of a government, they do not necessarily go and inform the immigration, and you don't need a valid visa to file your tax return. You have made money, you show good faith, and you come up and you file your taxes. And ultimately, you are showing a good faith that you are a law-abiding citizen, you have made X amount of money, and you are paying taxes. The Congress is working on an amnesty lately that we have heard about. Now, once they give this amnesty to illegals, it will show good faith. You have already shown good faith that you are law-abiding and you have been paying taxes for a number of years, and that will be in your favor.
So one should not be worried that it might work against them as far as their immigration status is concerned, and should make it a point to file the taxes.
Oh, absolutely. And even if they don't have Social Security, the IRS has a provision that you can go get yourself a tax identification number and then file the tax return.
Now, talking about taxes, there are some occasions when you receive gifts either from people who love you too much, or they want to give something to you. It could be your parents, could be friends, or any way, if that mechanism works. How that gift, if it is in the form of dollars, then are you expected to pay tax on that gift?
The basic rule is no. On a gift, on a general gift, you are not allowed. You're not supposed to pay tax. But there are limitations there. Starting 2013, annually you can gift up to $14,000 without any tax consequences, or even reporting. So up to $14,000, there is no reporting, and there is no paying taxes on anything.
So let me repeat. So if Lalitji wants to give me $14,000 as a gift every year, so I don't have to pay tax on that?
You don't have to have a relationship. One can give to somebody else $14,000 without any rhyme or reason, as long as you have an intention of giving a gift to. So if I'm giving to Mr. Vyas $14,000, up to $14,000, I do not have to report. And if you are parents and you are husband and wife, the husband can give $14,000 and a wife can give $14,000. So as a child, you can receive $28,000 every year without having to report or pay taxes on that.
That's an interesting point, worth exploring if you intend to give gifts or you want to receive gifts, and there is this kind of availability of funds. But looking at the time constraints, we will probably be moving to the second session of this conversation. But before that, the last question for you, Lalitji. Some of us are married, some of us are not. And there is so much stress about, emphasis is given whether you are filing jointly or separately. How it matters? I mean, ultimately you're just filing the taxes, so why it is considered so important?
If you are married, we have two options. You either file married filing joint, or you can file married filing separate. Now, for more, unless it is really, there are areas where you can use married filing separate, but for most of the time, your best option is to file married filing joint and save yourself some taxes. When you're filing married filing separate, there are some essential tax credits which the government does not allow you to take when you're filing married filing separate. So my recommendation will be to file married filing joint, unless you go to a professional and you may be in that category where married filing separate may be a better option for you.
So what I gather from here is that you should keep good understanding with each other as husband and wife, so that when you file jointly, it adds to the love. So I think now onward IRA is going to be promoting this idea during the Valentine Day, that file jointly. So jointly there are situations related to taxes and immigrations, and we requested our esteemed attorney Michael Fulwani ji to join us, and right after this break we'll have him talking to Lalit Abhichandani with some questions wherein immigration and tax issues have a sort of overlap. So stay with us. So we are back, and we are talking to Lalit Abhichandani ji, CPA, and then we are going to be joining by Mr. Fulwani. But before we do that, Lalit ji, there were a few more questions that I wanted your input on, and that is related to overseas accounts. We have heard many times about Swiss accounts, and that tells some sort of a story. But what are the rules for owning the overseas bank accounts, and who does it apply to?
If you are a citizen or a green card holder, or you are on different kinds of visa and you have lived here for 183 days in last 3 years, not only are you supposed to file your tax return, but also report to the government the overseas accounts that you might have over $10,000. So if you have accounts in India or in other foreign countries, you are required to report separately by June 30th of each year.
So, but if you don't have up to $10,000, then you don't have to report.
If you have less than $10,000, then you don't. There is no requirement. You don't need to report anything.
And then sometimes we wonder, Lalitji, that there could be double taxation. What I say when I say double taxation, meaning you are paying tax on the interest income or dividend income. Or capital gain tax for income earned overseas, so you are paying probably there also and here also. How does that work?
Even though it seems like you are paying taxes there as well as here, but the government allows us to reduce the taxes. So the taxes that you have paid in India, we take it as a foreign tax credit. In computing your taxable income or tax here, we reduce that much taxes that you have paid. So for most part, you do get the deduction of the taxes that you have paid in India.
And also this is very important, and many times we wonder, if I own some property in India or I purchase some real estate, more properties in India, so do I have to report that here, and how does that plays out for income tax purpose?
As a general rule, if you own a property, you do not have to report it. But if you are renting that, or if you are going to sell that, then it becomes a transaction. You are earning money out of that. So those transactions have to be reported. Again, the rental income or the sale of real estate is reportable, and you have to pay taxes on that.
And also, there are always new laws that comes into existence for non-residents, NRIs. Now, how do we report the foreign accounts, and if green card holders or citizens do not file tax in USA, or if they don't live in USA, then how it plays out for the tax purpose?
If you are a citizen or a green card holder and you are living overseas, you are still required to report this. The same rule applies, that you have more than $10,000 overseas and you are living overseas. There are some exemptions in there, but your basic rule is that you are still supposed to report, you are still supposed to pay taxes on that.
Wonderful. So now the moment has come that we request Mr. Fulwani to communicate with Lalita Abichandani ji from the point of view of immigration and tax both.
First of all, Ashokji, thank you very much. I happen to be here, so I get some opportunity to ask Mr. Abichandani, which I know him anyway for some time. And as you know that I am basically an immigration lawyer, so my questions really in my mind are, how does the taxation affect from immigration point of view? And I got a couple of quick questions, not a long list of questions. So I hope Mr. Abichandani can explain to you. Now, the green card holders and US citizens have to pay income tax on the worldwide income. No matter which country, India, any place in the world, they have income, they have to pay taxes on that. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
But that rule may not apply to non-immigrants who are on a temporary in the US. They may have to pay taxes on the US income, but do they still have to pay taxes on the Indian income, the non-residents?
The basic rule again is there are different categories of visas and there are different rules, but the basic rule that applies is the 183 days in last 3 years. There are some exemptions under certain J categories or other categories which are known as non-residents. But if you are on an L1 visa or an H1 visa and you have lived here for 183 days in last 3 years, then yes, you are required to report on the worldwide income.
So that brings another question. Aren't there two types of tax returns, a resident and a non-resident? And can you explain what's the difference between a resident and a non-resident?
The resident return is when you have lived in this country for green card holders or citizens or the H1 or the L1, and you have lived here for a number of years, then you file a resident tax return, which is 1040. For non-residents who have not lived here the required number of days, or they are under certain category of visas, we have an option to file a 1040 NR, which is for non-resident, and you still pay taxes on the income earned here in this country, not necessarily on the worldwide income because you have not lived here or you do not have a permanent visa.
So Mr. Abichandani, what you are saying really, and correct me if I'm wrong, a US citizen that's living in India permanently, long term, right? He still has to file a resident tax return, or he can file a non-resident because he's not living here in the US physically. He's only living in India most of the time, maybe some period of time coming back and forth to the US. So is it correct that he can file as a non-resident? He got that 180 days rule that you said applies to him?
If you are a citizen, then you have to file a resident tax return. But if you have other visas, then you have an option to file a 1040 NR on a non-resident tax returns for a green card holder or for these other category visa holders, whether it is H1 or L1. Because they have not lived here for the number of years, they have an option. They have to file the 1040 NR, which is a non-resident tax return.
I think there's a question coming into mind. You're right, maybe from the tax point of view, but there's a question that comes. Sometimes people make this mistake. They are a green card holder, but they have not been staying in the US. A lot of elderly parents, a lot of people that spend most of the time back home, and they're not physically residing here. So a tax consultant tells him, who's not very familiar with the immigration laws, that's okay. You come under that rule, you can file as a non-resident. But from my point of view, I must warn you that the green card holder is supposed to be living and working or just living here in the US. And the moment you file a non-resident tax return going forward, that can be a problem. People want to apply for a US citizenship. There's a question on the application form also. Have you ever filed a re-entry permit? Have you ever filed a non-resident tax return? And he says, yes, we got a problem for him.
That's very interesting.
So that was my main reason of asking questions.
Wonderful. So I'm glad that you were here and we could incorporate this side related to tax laws also in this session with Lalita Abichandani ji. It has been great sitting with this gentleman who has been working closely with people
I have a
who...
couple of more questions, if it is okay with you.
I think we would request you to have another session for the lack of time, but maybe a quick one.
Quick question. You know, people live here, the green card holders or whatever, they have family members back home in India. When they file a tax return, can they claim them as dependents if they are not physically here? They are living in India. They are still supporting them.
Absolutely.
Sending the money to
That's a
the
very good
hospital,
question.
right?
Yeah.
They have to, everybody who we put on a tax return, you have to have a social security number or a tax identification number. If you do not have that and they have not lived here, you cannot claim them as dependent. But if you have a mother or father who has not lived here, but you have supported them and they are green card holders or they have a social security, yes, then you can claim them as dependent.
So again, you will make that determination on a case by case.
On case by case basis, absolutely.
So there is so much to learn in the world, and the world of taxation and immigration also has so many intricate details that can only become clear if you sit with experts like Mr. Michael Phulwani, and for tax-related concerns with people like Lalit Abhichandani ji. It was great being with both of you, and appreciate your presence.
Thank you very much for inviting me, Vyas ji. It was a pleasure. It was my pleasure to be here and be with you guys.
And thank both of you again. Being here, I got an opportunity to ask 2 or 3 questions that were more relevant from the immigration point of view. And I thank you very much also for watching this program.
Wonderful. So on that note, the series of thanks, I also acknowledge the support of Dr. Bernard Vishwanath in making things happen for the community in such a way that we get the relevant information on our tips. This is Ashok Vyas.